Welcome to the Happiness Podcast. I'm Dr. Robert Puff. Have you ever seen, perhaps in person or on a video, someone living on the street because they're addicted to drugs and their lives are just horrid? And we look at that and we say, why would they do that? What a horrible life. What would possibly make them lead a life like that? The question today is that we really need to ask ourselves is, are we doing the same thing? Really? I'm pretty sure most of the people listening to this talk right now aren't living on the streets addicted to heroin or meth or some other drug. I'm pretty sure of that. But are we addicted to or sacrificing way too much for what we think are the thrills of life, the pleasures? Because that's what it boils down to. If you really want to know why so many people end up on the streets that are addicted to drugs, it's because the high that comes with those drugs is amazing. I wouldn't recommend that any of us try it, but they'll describe it to you as they've described it to me. And it is an amazing experience, one that few of us without drugs will ever experience. And these drugs are so powerful that no matter what's going on, if they're waking up every day, sleeping in their own feces, or perhaps having to sell their body to different men every single day just to get that drug, that high, they're willing to do that because that high, that brief, sometimes fleeting high, is so spectacular. And a lot of times the high only happens once or twice in their life, and they spend the rest of their life trying to recreate it. Now you may be wondering, what in the heck does this have to do with my life? Well, let me try to explain. The mechanism is this. There's something that we do, something that we engage in, something that we enjoy greatly, and it really means a lot to us. And then we ask ourselves, I want to have that, and I want to have that again. And we will often sacrifice so much for that one thing, or these certain things that we put so much high value on. For example, I live in Southern California, and I work in a town called Newport Beach. And if you've never been to Newport Beach, it is one of the most beautiful places in the world. The beaches are gorgeous, the homes are magnificent, and it's just lovely. The weather is perfect pretty much year-round. And the people I work with can have wonderful lives, but what I've learned is this. Sometimes the little bits that they focus on that are truly majestic have a huge price tag that goes with them. For example, I've heard so many times that they love waking up in the morning or getting out at night and walking along the beach because it's just spectacular watching the sunsets or the sunrises. But at the same time, they're killing themselves at their job to pay for that home, or they're in a very dysfunctional life, perhaps coming home drinking every day because they just hate their lives, or a myriad of other problems that they don't even see because that price tag of being able to be on the beach has such a quality of exquisiteness to it that they're not willing to give it up, where their lives could be a lot simpler and perhaps a lot better if they balanced their life better and didn't put so much emphasis on that sunset, because that sunset or that ocean view can have such a high price tag to it. Now, many of us can't relate to either of these stories, the one of person living on the street or the one of the person living on the ocean, but we probably can relate somewhere in the middle. Do we perhaps go to a job all week long that perhaps we really don't like so that we can come home on Friday night or Saturday night and look forward to being with our buddies or our friends and getting plastered just so we don't have to think about it anymore? That's one example. Or how about this one? We love food, and food tastes so good we would consider ourselves a foodie. But in the process of loving that food, we now have sacrificed our health, because over the years we put on a lot of extra weight, and that weight is causing us a lot of physical pain and health problems. Or how about someone who's in a relationship and every once in a while it is so good. There's beautiful lovemaking, there's incredible romance, but then the other 90% of the time there's criticism, there's anger, there's fights, there's pain. What all these examples are about is pleasure seeking, which comes with too big of a price. We are here, perhaps, because we want to be happy. That's what this podcast is about. But sometimes we'll sacrifice so much for that thrill, for that experience, and it has such a high price tag. Let me use my own example. One of the things that I love is to travel. I love to travel around the world, and I get great pleasure from it. But I discovered long ago, it too has a price tag. And if we're not careful, it can be a high price tag. For example, I've met a lot of people who travel extensively for long periods of time. And it sounds wonderful. And if we get to see their pictures on Instagram, it looks wonderful. But the truth of it is, if you really get to talk to people, there's a lot of stress which comes from traveling too much or too long. Sleeping in different places, living on a very tight budget, having to sleep in a room with a lot of other people because that's the cheapest way to go. Yes, that's part of traveling too, particularly when you do it for extensive periods of time. And like most of us are on a tighter budget, or all the energy and work that it takes to get to these exciting places, they don't show that part very often, but it is part of the experience too. I remember watching several videos on van life. I don't know if you've ever heard about that, but it's where people live in their vans full time. It sounds wonderful. I mean, they have very limited expenses. They get to travel around. But if you watch the honest videos, they'll talk about the hard parts of it. Sleeping in the same place, not always feeling safe, always having to go somewhere to take a shower. There's lots of it that aren't so great because things come with a price tag. And sometimes that price is just too high. Again, all these things we can do, except for the drug addiction. I would not recommend that one. But the rest are things that we could possibly do. And we are doing them, and they can be fun. But we have to ask ourselves, am I sacrificing too much for this pleasure? Because here's the bottom line. Having a good life, having a peaceful, happy life is the goal. But the goal should be that throughout the day, all day, it's a good life, not once in a while I have these fantastic thrills and I'm going to sacrifice so much for that thrill. That is not the good life. Now, I think what a lot of people believe is it isn't possible to have a good life all the time. Well, I disagree. I think we can really have good lives, and that's the goal we're working towards, a sense of harmony and peace in our lives where we wake up in the day and say, I'm so looking forward to this day. And at the end of the day, we say, that was a good day. Now, what comes with that is balance. For example, I'm sure many of us would love to see a sunset at the ocean. And if we live close enough, we probably can. But guess what? We don't have to have a home on the beach to go watch a sunset. We can drive there or take the bus there and watch it and live inland for a lot less cost. And because we have a lot less cost for our cost of living, then we don't have to do a certain job that may cause us to sacrifice way too much. And we can actually do a job that we enjoy because we keep our expenses down. Again, we can have a car that we enjoy that works for us, but if we're looking for the thrill car, it can just have too high of a price tag for it. Or if we're in a relationship, and we say, is it overall good? Or are there just too many battles, too many fights? And is it time for me to move on and find more harmony in my life and the people I'm with? Because the thrills come with a price tag, and they can be so high. They can kill us. They can destroy our health. They definitely take away from our happiness. But they also are really good at masking the pain we're feeling. I'm always amazed at how people are having horrible lives, but they'll talk about that little thrill or that big thrill that they have in their life, and it's all about that. They'll sacrifice almost everything for that thrill, and it's just too high. It'd be far better to travel just locally and see all the beautiful things around us than travel around the world and have to sacrifice too much. It'd be far better for us to live in a modest home and drive a modest car than to be able to have really expensive things and be stressed out by them or exhausted by what it takes to maintain them. or doing a job that we actually enjoy. It may pay less, but guess what? We can spend 40 to 50 hours a week at our jobs for decades. Wouldn't it be better to do something that we love and enjoy than doing something that creates a few little thrills on the weekends because now we have more money but we hate our job? I mean, the list goes on and on. We have to first ask ourselves this question: what am I paying too high of a price tag for? Are there things in my life that, yes, they bring me thrills, but they come with a huge price tag? Then we have to ask ourselves, is it time to let them go and work towards balance, doing things that bring us joy, that bring us happiness, that bring us peace, but in a more harmonious, gentle way, not in a thrill way? I mean, we know that extreme examples like drug addictions are very powerful and people will sell their souls for them. We don't do that because that just seems silly to us. But are we perhaps doing the same thing with the thrills we're seeking? When a certain sport season comes, do we get all excited and all our energy goes towards that instead of living our life the rest of the year? I mean, the list is so long, and we have to ask ourselves, what am I super passionate about that maybe is costing me too much and I'm sacrificing too much for that? Perhaps it would be better to say, I'm going to look to find happiness and just peace every day of my life, throughout the day, in the little things that come my way, like a smile from a neighbor, like enjoying my lunch because I spent extra care preparing for it, like driving to work and listening to a really nice podcast. The list can go on and on of little things we can do throughout the day to make our day better. And if that's our focus, instead of the thrills of life, I do believe we will have a much better life, because the goal and the truth is, we are here to have good lives every day. And it's possible, but the thrills catch us because we're just willing to sacrifice far too much for them. So we have to identify first, are there any thrills in my life that I'm putting too high of a price tag on? And two, ask ourselves, maybe it's time to relax those needs for those experiences. And if they come, that's okay. But if they don't come, I'm still okay. And that's really a good sign that we're on the right path. For example, over the years, I've had trips that were completely planned, often completely paid for, that got canceled. And yes, it was disappointing, but I just adjusted and did what I needed to do instead. Because life changes, and we learn to flow with life. Like, for example, I'm sure many of us are parents. And guess what? We may love being a parent, but probably our kids are going to grow up and leave. And if we're too attached to that, then we're going to suffer. We enjoy having them, and then we enjoy our freedom with not having them. It's a lot about just rolling with life and going with what works well for us and seeing so many beautiful things out there that we can participate in instead of needing one thing to really happen. We avoid the thrills. It isn't that we don't seek things that we enjoy, but we're not attached to them. And when they come, we're ever so thankful. And when they don't come, we're still ever so thankful for everything else in our life. This is the whole premise of this podcast, is to teach people how to have good lives consistently, not just once in a while, and to be able to ride the waves of life up and down and enjoy both going up and going down. We truly can have beautiful lives. It takes work. It takes effort, but if we put forth that time, we will find that our lives can truly be a beautiful adventure. Thank you for joining me on the Happiness Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about the podcast, please go to happinesspodcast.org. And until next time, accept what is, love what is.